Courtney. So today it's Todd Monken. Tomorrow it's Brian Flores. And then Monday's the first day that you can have people in your building that are currently gainfully employed by an NFL team. So how fast then do you think things move?
It should pick up for sure, because then you can have, those second interviews to either say yes, like we really like this person, we get him in person, we get a chance to see how they gel in the organization, whether they go to Hallis Hall or whether they do it, like whether the Bears fly to them. I mean, that's still something that could happen. Like, we don't know if it's going to be at Hallis. I mean, you would assume it would be, because Ron Rivera and Mike McCarthy did their first round interviews in person in Lake Forest. So it'd be good to get the people that you think might be your next head coach into the building. But I think things finally pick up next week. And I know a lot of Bears fans have been waiting these last 2 weeks since the season ended, and we saw the first virtual interview with Mike Vrabel, and then there were 12 others after that, and there will be 14 that we know of by the time the weekend's over. But I would still kind of like hold out just until the national championship is over, because there's a lot of buzz right now in league circles and just kind of what you're hearing in college football too, about whether they are going to get that interview with Marcus Freeman. What the NFL Network reported last week is that there was interest, and that's not the first time we have heard his name. But I'm really curious to see, like, win or loss, like whatever happens Tuesday, Wednesday next week, if the buzz from Freeman picks up. And today might provide a clue, because today's media day for the national championship. He's certainly going to be asked about it. Mm-hmm. I know college reporters that I've spoken with have been asking, well, what's the deal on the NFL side? Is this real? Because collegiately, the AD, Marcus Freeman, they're all, everybody at Notre Dame's kind of keeping that under wraps right now, which they should, because they're trying to go win a national title. But might give you a little insight today if he completely shuts that idea down, or if that's something that he, speaks about in a roundabout manner that might lead you to believe a door is still open. But I do think next week, when you pass January 20th, for most of these candidates, you're going to get a chance to get them in person. But let's say Ben Johnson and the Lions, Aaron Glenn and the Lions win this weekend. The earliest the Bears would be able to talk to either of those candidates for a second interview is January 27th in person. So just something to keep in mind of if it does end up dragging on beyond next week. But I do think we finally get a little bit more momentum the week of the 20th.
Courtney, here's a good question for this show and your Sunday morning show. So what is a better job? Is it being the Notre Dame Fighting Irish head coach, or one of these, bad NFL jobs? We know the NFL is the pinnacle, right? It's the best of the best. But just think about Marcus Freeman, where he is right now. The world's his oyster. He's not going to get fired anytime soon from Notre Dame now that they're in the national championship game. So what's a better job, you think, for Marcus?
I was talking with a source about this yesterday, because I was curious. Like, there's one of 32 of these in the NFL. And he's a god in college right now. Think about all the things that Brian Kelly could not do. And really, like, the coaches before him, dating back to the Lou Holtz national championship, there were a lot of coaches who took this brand, which is an international brand that stands on its own in college football, and couldn't win the big one. Marcus Freeman's there. Win or lose, he's still there in the national title game after turning this thing around in 3 years. Yeah, there are a couple bad losses like Marshall and NIU along the way, but they still put up double-digit win seasons, and they've still been there. And now he's got a chance to show, I did this in a short amount of time, and I can continue to do this. I can continue to tap into the transfer portal, which he did, getting Riley Leonard, going after big-name targets in college football, and flipping that roster in about a year. It's really impressive. Personally, I wouldn't leave college football if I'm him in that situation. Not saying that for everybody, but my goodness, like, he's got a great thing going at Notre Dame. And you know what this is going to do. Like, the buzz around the Bears and Marcus Freeman, he already got the contract extension. If you're the AD, if you're anybody inside on the board of directors at Notre Dame, whatever they call it there, you're looking to get him more money to make sure that no amount of NFL attention could sway him one way or the other. And that will be very interesting to see if indeed this thing does pick up next week, if he wants to take an interview, if he's offered an interview. Because right now, all we know is that there's interest, but that interest isn't coming from nowhere. I personally think for Marcus Freeman, there is no no real rhyme or reason for him to leave college football right now, because if he continues to do this, NFL jobs, if that's what he wants, will be available in the future.
I have a curveball for you. So unless you're one of the Houston Astros and someone's banging on a garbage can, I don't think you see this one coming. Bill Belichick has not signed his deal in North Carolina, and I'm hearing from somebody I know close to that situation, they're getting more than a little nervous. Is there a chance he's back in the NFL?
You're not the only one to think that, Cap. I know Michael Lombardi went on his campaign yesterday on Twitter saying it's all BS and stop feeding into this narrative. Then why didn't you sign the contract?
Right.
Like, he signed the term sheets there, and we know that there's a $10 million buyout before June 1, 2025. After that, it's $1 million. I find it hard to believe that he's making all these hires, Freddie Kitchens, Mike Prefer, like veteran NFL coaches that are now coming to North Carolina only for him to jump back into the NFL.
I agree.
Until he signs it, it's like, what's the deal? You're on the recruiting trail. We hear about it yesterday because Lombardi's on the Pat McAfee show talking about it. Why not just sign the deal? Like, what, to me, the biggest question I have, you negotiated this thing. You became the head coach. I believe it was about 8 weeks ago now, 7 weeks at North Carolina. Why haven't you signed it? You've gotten all these great NFL coaches, people with pedigree. Your son's coming over from UW. Why would you do that only to leave? But I'm not surprised that the buzz picks back up, because it's like once you see your ex doing well with somebody else, that's when you want to get involved again. And that's what it feels like with the NFL. Now, is it serious or is it just a temptation sort of thing? That's the hard thing to figure out. But it is very, very strange that he could have put this all to bed. He could do it right now and put it to bed by signing that contract, but he still hasn't for some reason. So
strange. As we talked to Courtney Cronin, who covers the NFL and the Bears for ESPN and ESPN.com on Kap and J Hood, presented by ESPN Bet. So we talk about the two-horse race, Cap, about is it going to be Ben Johnson? Is it going to be Mike McCarthy? And again, there's outside, choices that the Bears could take too. But ultimately, it's different philosophies, though, to me, Courtney. So on one end, you have Mike McCarthy, grizzled veteran, who's worked with Aaron Rodgers, who's worked with Dak Prescott. And the numbers are what they are. They've been outstanding for McCarthy in his time as a head coach. The other side is Ben Johnson, who has turned the fortunes of the Lions around offensively, but has never been a head coach. So the latter is something that we've seen for the Bears for a long time, and that is someone who's never done it before, the hot coordinator, defense, offense, whatever. So which way do you think that Ryan would lean in this spot, knowing that, hey, we're in last place, we got some work to do? Would you rather go with a veteran or someone who's never done it before? I feel like he might lean with the veteran. What do you think?
The way it was phrased to me when I was having this conversation the other day about, like, what's the draw with McCarthy? Obviously, 8 division titles, 11 playoff appearances, and 18 seasons as a head coach. But that speaks for itself. But if you're a 5-win team and you want to get taken to being a 10-win team, he's your guy. If you are a 10 or 11-win team and want to get over the hump, want to get to the playoffs and make a deep playoff run, probably not. But the Bears, I mean, let's be honest about this. They're closer to they're right in the midst of the first example I painted for you. And he's a good coach. I know that people look at this and say there's more intriguing candidates. Those people are right. But Mike McCarthy has a history of producing regular double-digit season wins and getting yourself in the mix to either win the division or be the wild card team and get to the playoffs. I know that this team tells you that championship aspirations are their goal. You have to get to the playoffs first. McCarthy can be the guy to do that, and I think do it rather quickly. Does it happen in year one? Maybe, maybe not. This roster needs some turnover. It certainly needs some more pieces in the most critical positions on the offensive and defensive line. But on the flip side of that with Ben Johnson, first off, to throw this back real quick, are we sure that Ben Johnson wants this job? Because the tie with him to the Raiders and being able to bring your own GM, it's the reason I asked Kevin Warren that question 2 Tuesdays ago. What happens if you have a head coach candidate come in and that person says, I want this job, but I want my own personnel people? And he kind of shut that down because he said, Ryan's leading the search. We are confident that our process will lead us to the right candidate. So then if that's really the case, Ben Johnson isn't coming to Chicago. If he really wants his own personnel people in what Tom Brady's selling him on what can happen with the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, they have no quarterback. The free agency class, the draft group is not great this year, but maybe that's what his long-term vision is. I think for Chicago, if it aligns to where Ben Johnson wants to come here, then you are tapping into somebody who has the cachet of helping Jared Goff become an MVP candidate, turning that Detroit offense around in a matter of a couple years, and has a support of players. I know that he's never done this before, but just listen, the last couple of weeks when players are asked about Ben Johnson because they know that he's, becoming a head coach candidate, Amon-Ra St. Brown talked about it on his podcast with Caleb Williams the other day. Even Caleb talked about it with, he's like, I think you guys have a good thing going on there in Detroit. Obviously, he's referring to Dan Campbell, but listen to the praise that he heaps onto someone like Ben Johnson. Players know. And I think it's that ingenuity, the offensive game plan that he has, not just like on an X's and O's standpoint, but how do you move this thing forward? Is that a more modern offense and an offense that would fit this quarterback versus a version of what they were running in Green Bay for so many years that I know Orlovsky has called it a little bit outdated and kind of flip-flopped on his view of how that would work for Caleb Williams or not.
Yes.
I think it's more of like looking towards the long term versus what could be the quicker fix right now in a McCarthy that may not get you to like the ultimate goal, but hey, it keeps you a hell of a lot more relevant in the postseason than the team is now.